Alright, everyone, the time has come again when a new set is upon us. This time around, we have the Plague of the Cute Animals, Bloomburrow, and the set looks really exciting. So, I'll be doing a set review, basically focusing on potential new cards for Standard since we have rotation, and Pioneer as well. So, yeah, so let's get into it. So the set looks pretty powerful. A lot of cards are really interesting and sweet. There's also a lot of support for Kindred's archetypes, like the cats, rabbits, frogs, and so on. But a lot of also individually powerful cards. Alright, so let's get into it. First off, by the way, I kind of stole the idea of the PowerPoint presentation from Aspiring Spike, so I think that this works really well to showcase your ideas and what you're thinking about when you're talking about the cards. I think it works better than just looking at the card itself. And so in the first slide here, I have the card that has caught my attention the most, and that is Eater of All. Basically, this thing is a new slash revival of the food archetype. I think it's really powerful. So what it does by itself, it's that it's a 5/6 6 that has the Wing Reaper text. So basically the war, they need to sacrifice a food or a creature, and it turns all creatures into foods. So basically what this reads as most of the times that they need to sacrifice a creature to kill this. It's a 6/6, so it's going to be very well statted against something like Phoenix. They need 2 kill spells to kill this and 2 creatures. And the sweet part, whenever a food gets into the graveyard, it grows by 2 as well. So it also has that going for it. So they try to kill it with a burn spell. This turns into an 8/8, which is pretty huge, and it also works with your own food synergies. So it gets bigger when you sacrifice a cat. You use Gilded Goose for mana, and so forth and so on. And the biggest thing this card enables, it's an infinite combo with 2 Cauldron Familiars. If you have one in your graveyard and one in play, their foods in play, so you can sack 1 cat to bring back the other cat and go forth doing that until your opponent is dead. And that seems pretty powerful to me. If you can kill your opponents on the spot on turn 5 from a cat in play and one in the graveyard. So I think that's going to be pretty strong, and the card is solid by itself. There's also a bunch of new cards that they're releasing, like Vine Reap, Mentor, and Camellia, that are food payoffs and food generators. Vine Reap is a 3/2 that when it enters and dies makes the food, so it's aggressively statted. It's a threat and can trade by itself, while providing you the game pieces necessary to enable your synergies. Camellia is another card that rewards you for sacrificing food, so she's going to make your cat loop more powerful, your Trail of Crumbs more powerful, and I also added here the Rotten Moth Viper, which is a card that reminds me a lot of Herald of Anguish, and it's this huge threat that gets cheaper when you sacrifice non-land permanents to reduce its cost. So it's pretty good with all the extra material you have hanging around, like your cats, your food tokens, and it's also very good with Fable if you end up playing that. Steal effects, like when the Firstborn. I'm thinking about starting to test this as just a black-green deck, but I could see trying to dip my toes into other colors as well. But I think that this core of food enablers and an easy to assemble infinite combo seems very good. You can maybe even play things like Lively Dirge to put the cats in the grave if you think you need that. but I think there is definitely something here, and this is going to be my biggest focus on like week 1. Moving on, we have like a set of new white cards that I think are really cool. The basically they're like pretty powerful by themselves. They're not like I think that the card that might enable some type of new archetype is Salvation Swan, which is callback to Restoration Angel, and it also has extra synergy, right? Where while it doesn't need other birds to work, it's just good by itself. If you happen to have other creatures that can trigger this in your deck that you are already happy playing, this is going to be even more awesome. And there's a bunch of new good creatures with ETBs that this kind of wants to blink in the set. There's like the new Otter of Bolas. There's also Beza that's here in the slide, which is like a new power craft version of Thragtusk. Basically, this thing it's basically good against any type of deck. It's good against aggressive decks. It's good against decks that are ramping. It's good against decks that are trying to kill you. And it's good against like decks that are trying to grind you out with resources. I think this card is really cool with gifts, because if you put them up a card and they have more cards than you, this draws you a card. So yeah, it cancels out. That's why I kind of paired her here in the slide with Starfall Invocation. It seems really nice that you can play Beza and like stabilize the board. They have to play more creatures, and you can just rough and give them a card and bring Beza back, kind of like resetting the board state and leaving you back with like this huge creature that gain you a bunch of resources. So I think this is going to be really good for standard, and also for Pioneer. I think Beza is a really strong, at least sideboard option for blue-white control. It's also an elemental, so she works with Kahira. And I think this is a more versatile and powerful effect than Regal Coral Call. So this is going to help you against more decks, where Coral Call is kind of only good against aggressive slanted decks. This is going to be good even like blue-white mirrors, because this is big and gives you resource. Yeah, so expect great things from Beza Bonding Spring. Moving on, I have a slide here that I put together some new cards that could enable new archetypes, both in Standard and Pioneer. The first one is Redescent Vine Slasher. This card is 1 mana Dread Presence with Offspring, so if you pay 3 mana, you have 2 of them, and yeah, this is going to kill your opponent with Scape Shift fairly easily, and that is a style of deck that people always try to make work. It's really nice with like fetch lands as well, and it's the thing that gets me excited about this is just it's so cheap. It's 1 mana, and sliding this in when you have Scape Shifts and like just trying to kill your opponents in one go when they tapped out seems fairly doable, especially if you consider that you can get like the Capena fetch lands to double trigger this and like just go crazy. The Scape Shift deck in Pioneer with Spelunking has been a thing that people had decent success with, and I think this kind of goes into that type of shell as a way to kill your opponents for cheap. Next up we have the infamous Cruel Claw. This card pays you off for stacking the top of our library with powerful cards. We saw this kind of deck building style of deck happen in Standard with Caustic Bronco and Insatiable Avarice. And Bronco is a good card by itself. Cruel Claw is a good card by itself, and it helps kind of play into that type of style of deck where like you have this good creature. It doesn't need anything else to work, but you also have this unfair angle that you can play towards too, and you don't need to put like some uncastable card in your deck. You can just like if you flip Evoke Despair of this, it's like awesome already. You don't need to play something really expensive. Same with Bronco. So I think this card is really good. I'm looking, and if you're playing this in a Thoughtseize style deck with discard spells and stuff, you can make way for this through removal spells if you can manage to give this haste somehow. Yeah, I think this card has a lot of potential, and it is the type of card that runs away with games really quickly without any help. So I think this card is pretty awesome. And next up we have this one is a bit like I did not know exactly how to go about doing anything with Storm Splitter. The card is the type of card that you read and you go, wow, this card is so unique and so powerful. It can kill your opponents fairly quickly, and like I think the card that works the easiest with it that I found is Cryptolith Rites, where going infinite with this is going to be it is very easy once we have Right in play. But what does that deck look like? That's a big question mark for me. I just put it here as something that I'm not sure if I'm going to try, but I think people that like to build like weird combo decks are going to enjoy the puzzle of Storm Splitter very much. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if this turns up anywhere. I saw some people talking about playing this with the Bloomburrow that gives your spells convoke. So it's kind of playing into the same idea where basically you want to be able to play this either for free or when you can use this to storm off pretty quickly because it's exponential. Once you play your first spell, you have 2 of them. Once you play the second spell, you have 4 of them. And it's very easy to kill your opponents from there. This card is very unique, and it's the kind of deck that's fun to exist because it asks you to build your deck around it, and it pays you off in a big way, which is always kind of fun. So moving on, I also put some of the new cards here. Camellia is showing up again. This is basically the forage package. All the forage mechanic works really well with Insidious Roots, and mostly of the new squirrels have activated abilities. So all of this kind of plays into Soul Cauldron as well, which is like a kind of archetype again that people had success with, and it shows up once in a while. I have played this. I think it's pretty strong, but it's missing consistency, and like some of the creatures you have to play to enable Insidious Roots triggers are not so good by themselves. And I think these new creatures, like the squirrels specifically, are very good by themselves. They help you find roots and enable it at the same time. You might be able to play games where you don't draw roots, which is really important because since you don't have tutors, you don't have a lot of draw effects. You are not going to find roots every game. But once all your stuff works kind of by itself and works with Cauldron as well, you have like a much better deck, and it's like a really fun graveyard deck as well. So this is also something I'm really excited to try. Moving on, I have here in this slide and the next one, I have grouped together kind of like the mouse, rats, aggressive cards, because I think they kind of want you to play a bunch of them together because they're like kindred effects type of cards, and some of them play more into the heroic target me style of deck, like the red whites mouses mostly play into that kind of deck. I think the most impressive card for me here is Volley Mightcaller. This card is Champion of the Parish with Trample for like the types of creatures that it has listed. It's really above rate. It's really strong. It works with a lot of stuff. I have not yet went to Scryfall and like made a search of like old squirrels and frogs to see how can all of this fit together in a deck. But I think that this card and Quest Collar by themselves enable this type of strategy because they're really above rate and they are the type of card that I think that can carry a deck like that by themselves without that much help. Like Mightcaller is an insane one drop. It's something we have not seen in a while. It gets out of hand pretty quickly. It works with tokens if you're trying to do that. So like something like Offspring and the card I have next to them, War Leader. I think War Leader is more of a standard card, but you never know. I think that could be pretty strong. Like just the curve of Mightcaller into Manifold Mouse is already pretty brutal. You're hitting your opponent for 4, and it's only getting worse from there. Yeah, so I expect something like this to be at least very good in Standard, and it might show up here and there in Pioneer maybe. I'm going to try this for sure. I really like tribal kindred style creature decks, and this is going to be on the list for sure. I think I also like the red-white cards that have the Valiant mechanic are really cool, and they work really well with like pump effects and that style of strategy. So Manifold Mouse and Emberhead Challenger worked really well with most cards like Monster's Rage. Heartfire Hero is a really strong one drop. It reminds me of Cacophonous Scamp, but better because like this gets bigger, and when it dies it deals damage equal to its power to any targets. So Hard Claw is also a nice one drop. In Bloomburrow, I think they did a really good well of giving weapons to like aggressive decks. A lot of the creatures are cheap and aggressively slanted. They also have some late game mana sinks with Offspring, which I really appreciate when we're trying to play an aggressive deck. It feels bad when if you don't manage to have a good start and you go into the late game, you are already kind of lost because your cards are weak in the late game, and this is not the case with a lot of the cards in the set, which is a really cool design. In the next slide, I also have some of the aggressive type cards that are going to have enable those strategies I was talking about. I just want to give a shout out here to Seasoned Warring Guard, which could also fit in Convoke style strategies because it's a 1-drop with 3 power if you have tokens in your deck, which is something those decks might be interested in. It's like yet another card that helps you play games where you don't like just go crazy with a Convoke card like Knight Errant of Use. So I think it can work pretty well there. And also Keen-Eyed Curator, that is the new Scavenging Use. I'm not sure how this compares to Scavenging Use in old formats. It's harder to cast initially, but it has a colorless mana cost for the ability. So it's interesting. I'm not sure how well that card is going to play in practice. I also want to give a shout out to Scrap Shooter. I think this card is awesome. Being like a 3 mana 4/4 that has the option of being Reclamation Sage is really cool. Because the problem with Reclamation Sage when you're playing it, or are those types of creatures, right, is that you feel bad playing it if you're not getting value out of the ETB. But this is just like well started, and you can play this on curve to pressure, and if you draw it later and you need to kill something, you can. So it's pretty nice. Next up, I have all the kindred lands here grouped together. I think they're really strong and they pay you off in a big way for playing the creature types they mention. Mostly the red and the green one. The others are also fine, but like if you're playing a lot of creatures in those types, heavily consider playing a couple of these. Especially in standard, you'll probably end up playing like 4 if you can, because you have less option in lands and they only tap for, but they only tap for creature spells. But overall, I think these are pretty powerful. And moving on, I know people like always ask me with which new set that comes out, which cards I'm considering for Niv. This time around, I'm only considering these two. Vrang is a nice creature. It has ward 2, which is not bad. Like it's pretty tough to kill this, and it can snowball out of control by itself. With the last ability where you make X rats that get bigger for each rat you have in play, and for each creature you exile. So a lot of your removal spells are red exile, and it also has a clause where if opponent creature will die, it gets exiled. So this is like, it's a blue black Kalitas style card, and I could see playing this for sure. It works well with what the deck is trying to do. It pays you off for playing the game you already want to play, and it's a good kind of on-rate card. It's probably going to be better the most effective the passive is, where they're trying, like this for example, it's quite nice against the Cauldron Familiar deck if that becomes a thing. So this like Yashar maybe. So yeah, I think this card is good. It helps you kill phoenixes as well. I think this is a solid one overall. And the second one is, I think I'm more excited about this one. It's Lunar Convocation. They finally printed like a good value card that you can bring from your sideboard for attrition matchups, and this also works really well with Cornucopia, where the Cornucopia is going to give you all the life you want to be fueling this, both for the passive and the draw effect. Because like you play a spell, you gain life, you achieve the first condition, you pay life for this, you achieve the second condition, and this is giving you cards and making creatures and draining your opponent. So I think this is really nice if you expect the game to go long, and I'm going to try this in the sideboard for sure. Next up, I have just a couple slides here to finish it off with some solid cards that I think are going to show up in Constructed in general. The first one is Spawned Prophet. This is basically here because it's Elvis Visionary with True Devotion. So I think people are going to try this in mono green. I'm not sure if this can show up somewhere else. Maybe like maybe some kind of mono blue deck that didn't have access to this type of creature as well. People sometimes play mono blue Devotion, but I think this is going to be tried in mono green for sure. I also have Dual Drop Cure here. It can reanimate all the Amalia combo by itself. People are saying that, and gifting your opponent a card when you're killing them off with a combo is not a big deal. So people are probably going to try that in Amalia as well, but it's tough. That deck has really harsh deck building constraints. You need to play a lot of creatures to make like your deck rats dance, make your companies work and things like that. So I'm not sure this is going to see play over something like Lively Darge even, but it has potential for sure. Next up I have the new incarnation of Burning Tree Emissary in the Gecko. I think this card is pretty good. It works in a way where you can't play a bunch of these into a Bushwalker usually, but you can do that after combat, or if you dealt damage somehow with a desert, I don't know. And yeah, I think this card is pretty solid. I'm not sure where it fits exactly. but like it's in theory a free to drop, and that's always worth mentioning and keeping your eye open. And lastly, I have Dark Star Augur. This is more of a standard card, I think, but for 4 mana you get 2 Dark Confidence. That's just a lot of value, and I think that some decks are going to be interested in just a solid 3-drop post rotation. Next, I have Elude the Shoreless Sea. I think this card is the best mono blue type Hotaging that I have ever seen. I think it works really well in that style of mono blue tempo deck where you get to play this and hold up a counter spell to protect it very easily. It discounts colored mana, which is something we usually don't see. And when if your first copy dies, it sets you up for the second copy where the flood counters are going to stay in your lands, and they stay there for your next copy to have to benefit from that. So I think this card is flying under people's radars a bit too much, because I think this is really strong, especially for standards, but I think this could see playing Pioneer as well. It's so easy for this to run away with the game where you can just protect it for free and just play conjups for free, counter spells for free. So yeah, I expect that one to see quite a bit of play, especially in standard, because mono blue was a deck at some point and it has been a deck for a while now. Just has fallen off in popularity, but it can truly come back with rotation because How to Gene stays, I think. Next up, we have Storm Chaser's Talents. I think this card is awesome. I think most of the classes have some potential. I just listed this one here because I think it's the strongest. It's 1 mana, and to get to 1/1 with prowess, that's just distance card you most spell decks could be happy to play, and in the late game this just wins the game. So I'm even thinking about this as a sideboard strategy for Phoenix when you're trying to beat black decks, because usually people are going to be bringing lots of graveyard hate, and the game is going to go on forever, and you can get to level 3 on this because the game is just going to last for a long time, and they can't do much about it because it's an enchantment, and once you're there, this just wins you the game. I think it's pretty simple. Someone compared this to Kumano faces Kakazan, which is a fair comparison, but they were talking about maybe a blue-red style pros deck, just playing this and having this mana flood insurance in the late game, which is something I can buy for sure. You can rebuy a Treasure Cruise or something like that with the second chapter. So yeah, I think this card is cool. It provides you something early, and in the late game it dominates basically. And next we have Altar of Ballast. This is a card that I put here because it goes really well with Salvation Swan. I think it's going to form a core of value cards in standard mostly. I'm probably also going to try to pair this with counter spells in Lightning Helix to see if I can build a deck out of that. Try to relive the old days of just controlling Modern. This also is really strong in the late game when you draw this and you can make a copy, so I think this card is pretty nice. Next up, I put Zoraline here. I'm not sure where this will fit, but because on turn 3 this is mostly weaker than something like Extraction Specialist, but in the late games it's also stronger. And it's a better creature by itself, like 3/3 flying vigilance. I'm not sure where this could see play. It's also cool to note that this returns any no-land permanents, not just creatures. So there could be something there as well, like you're trying to return, I don't know, Agatha Soulcauldron or like Titan Blade that went to the graveyard because you sacrifice it to your Rotten Mouth's Viper. Cards like that. Like this is also it's kind of asking you to play with this with other bats because like life gaining and draining is the bat mechanic. So this could see play in standard in the deck with a lot of bats. Yeah, this also works really well with deep covered bats like most other cards that care about gaining life and losing life, right? And I think that's it about Bloomburrow. I think the set is really cool. I think it's nice that they also made a new set with like a fresh setting. It looks pretty powerful as well. I think maybe people try to dismiss it a little bit because it's like full of cute animals, but I think like there's a lot of cool cards here that I didn't even talk about that could show up. I can't really talk about everything, and there's also the chance that something slips through the cracks, right? And I end up seeing a lot of play. I mostly focus on like things that popped out to me, and that could actually show up in constructed. So yeah, let me know what you think about like this style of presentation. This is the first time I'm doing this, so everything's up to debates. And let me know what you think in the comments. Alright, thank you guys. See you next time.